Today's show brought to you by redcon1.com. That's right. Click the link at the bottom of the podcast app in which you are listening to this on. Check them out. Use promo code T20 Quartermiss. That's right. redcon1.com.
There's nothing special about being American. None of you can define for me what an American is.
I am the nation. I was born on July 4th, 1776, and the Declaration of Independence is my birth certificate. The bloodlines of the world run in my veins because I offered freedom to the oppressed. I am many things and many people. I am the nation. I'm 200 million living souls and the ghost of millions who have lived and died for me. I'm Nathan Hale and Paul Revere. I stood at Lexington and fired the shot heard round the world. I'm Washington, Jefferson, Patrick Henry. I'm John Paul Jones, the Green Mountain Boys, Davy Crockett. Lee.
Coming to you from the DTOM Studios in the free state of Florida, sponsored by Maker's Mark Bourbon, this is Don't Tread on Merica. Alrighty, guys, how's everybody doing out today? Today it is September 11th, 2025, Thursday, a rare Thursday show. Obviously, I was going to bring you a show yesterday, but my computer decided to be funny with me, and I couldn't. And then also, we had a tragic event that happened yesterday, and that's going to be our subject of our show today, the assassination of Charlie Kirk. So we'll get to that in just a moment, guys. If you want to help out the show, go to the DTOM Store. I'm a little frustrated today. You guys are probably too. Anyway, get you some show merch. Go there. I don't take any profits from that. I give that to Tunnels of Towers in lieu of what today is. It's a good thing for you to do. It's not much. You buy a t-shirt, you buy, a whiskey glass, whatever you buy. The couple of dollars that are made from that, I give it to them, okay? I don't take any of that money. What I want you to do is buy the shirt and wear it proudly. And people, what's the DTOM? It's Don't Tread on Merica. Go check it out. The dude's crazy. He's fucked up. He's just a regular dude with a full-time job and a part-time podcast. I want to tell you, full-time guys, I worked 74 fucking hours last week. I'm fucking tired. That's why the shows have been lagging. I'm sorry. It is what it is, okay? I got to make money, right? We all got to make money. Anyway, also, make sure you follow the show on whatever podcast app you're listening to this on. Make sure you go to Don't Tread on Merica on Facebook, Instagram, True Social, and the Ticker Talker. Of course, I do drink videos on the TikTok, which I know I haven't made any in a while, but I'm, once again, busy. And don't forget about the Twitter X Machine. DTOM Podcast 1776. Now let's get this show started. A little bit of Damn Yankees, courtesy of one Ted Theodore Nugent. Don't Tread on Merica version. If you guys know the words, you please
Today's show.
Push the wrong button. Please sing along, and we'll have a good old time. Guys, I have a good show, and I have a conspiracy theory that I can almost guarantee you nobody's talking about. So please, let's get through the words, get through the lyrics, sing along, crank it up, rip the knob off. Let's go.
But you better not set your sights on me.
Merica, come on. Merica. Sing along, guys. This show's going to be important. Merica, all right. Welcome to Don't Tread on Merica. Of course, I am your host, Don Q, the one and only. And this is the podcast where we dive deep into the stories the mainstream media won't touch or won't touch honestly. Today we're tackling a topic that's been lighting up Twitter all day, today and yesterday, and group chats across the country, the assassination of Charlie Kirk. Yesterday on September 10th, the conservative founder of Turning Point USA and outspoken supporter of Israel was gunned down at Utah Valley University. A single bullet to the neck ended his life at 31, and the suspect is still at large. But what's got people talking isn't just the tragedy, it's the whirlwind of conspiracy theories that erupted almost immediately. Was this a random act of violence, or was it something more sinister? Today we're diving into 3 specific claims. First, a supposed statement from Charlie Kirk himself where he allegedly said he'd be killed if he spoke out against Israel. Second, a mysterious private jet flight data that some claim vanished after plane left the area shortly after the shooting. And a third, a viral video showing a man behind Kirk making what some people call hand signals. It looked like he was, motioning for the person to steal second. A viral video showing a man moments before the fatal shot. So please, buckle up, get ready, because this is going to be a wild ride. We'll unpack the evidence, the speculation, and maybe some fiction. But I'll let you decide what's plausible. So please, before we dive in, a quick reminder, nothing I'm going to discuss today is definite. The FBI is still obviously investigating and the suspect remains unknown. My job isn't to tell you what I believe or what to believe. It's to lay out the pieces and ask the tough questions. So grab you a nice cold drink. I got mine right here. You see that sucker? I need a tall one. Settle in, and we'll get started here in just a second. I don't need a commercial. I need music. All right, guys, let me get this ready because I wasn't ready. I'm sorry, I'm an idiot. Welcome to the show. The show where the idiot runs the show. This fucking computer, I swear to God. Let's go. Come on, where are you at? Where's the music? Come on. Play, goddammit. Jesus fucking Christ. All right, guys, I'm not going to crank this music up too loud. I just like a little bit playing so it drowns out any background noise. Okay. So, let's set the scene, and we'll start with Charlie Kirk's background. So, Charlie Kirk was a polarizing figure, no question about it. At age 18, he co-founded Turning Point USA, a conservative youth organization that became a powerhouse in right-wing politics. He was a close ally of Donald Trump, a vocal Christian nationalist, and a fierce defender of free speech. He was also a staunch supporter of Israel, often debating anti-Israel activists on college campuses, and earning praise from figures like Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Just 2 weeks before his death, Netanyahu supposedly called Kirk, or he actually did call Kirk, a lion-hearted friend, not lying, lion-hearted friend of Israel, and invited him to visit. Now, that's from the Jerusalem Post article that came out today. Kirk's American comeback tour was kicking off at Utah Valley University yesterday. He was at his Prove Me Wrong debate table, engaging with students when a single gunshot, likely from a bolt-action rifle, a high-powered bolt-action rifle, according to reports, struck him in the neck, which That's what the video shows, and we'll get to that in a minute. He collapsed and chaos erupted. Video footage showed the crowd scattering, and Kirk was pronounced dead at a nearby hospital. The FBI is assisting local law enforcement, but as of right now, no suspect has been identified. There is, however, a person of interest, and that is being put all over Twitter and the news. So, before we dive into this, if you know who this person is in the pictures, maybe say something. I have my thoughts on all this, and if you guys know the show and you've been listening to the show for a long time, I think you know exactly where I'm going to go with this. Okay? Now, Kirk wasn't without enemies. His outspoken views on everything from transgender issues to election integrity made him a lightning rod. But the speed with which conspiracy theories exploded after his death is something else entirely. Within hours, Twitter was flooded with posts claiming everything from a government cover-up to foreign involvement. Some even pointed fingers at Israel and the Mossad, despite Kirk's vocal pro-Israel stance. So why was that? Well, that's what we're here to unpack. So first, let's start with the first conspiracy. The claim that Charlie Kirk said he'd be killed if he spoke out against Israel. Now, this is a big one and is fueling a lot of anti-Israel narratives online. So where did this idea come from? The idea that Charlie Kirk believed that he'd be killed for criticizing Israel stems from a single source, or at least that's all I could find. It's a clip from an October 23rd episode of the PBD podcast, Patrick Bet-David, which I do listen to, where Kirk floated a conspiracy theory about Hamas attacks on Israel. He suggested that Netanyahu might have allowed the attacks to happen for political reasons, pointing to Israel's internal political turmoil at the time. Kirk said that Israel's security is so tight, the whole country is a fortress, that a 6-hour attack seemed implausible without some kind of stand-down order. He stopped short of accusing Netanyahu directly, but said questions needed to be asked. Now, I'll say this about that. I don't listen to the Charlie Kirk podcast. Not because I don't like Charlie Kirk. I do. When he's on other podcasts, I listen to those. You know, I listen to the Patrick Bet-David. I listen to him, Tucker. I listen to... the reason I don't listen to Charlie Kirk's podcast is because I have a few podcasts that I do listen to, and there's just not enough time in a day. Simple. But here's where things get murky. Some Twitter post claims that Kirk later said in private conversation in off-the-record settings that he feared for his life. If he pushed this theory further, one user who post got thousands of retweets, quote, Charlie told friends if he spoke out about Israel, he'd be killed. Then look what happened. No evidence, obviously, is provided. No audio, no screenshots, no names of these friends, just a claim. And yet it's taking on a life of its own. So let's break this down. Kirk was a public figure who never shied away from controversy. He debated everyone from socialist to anti-Israel activist. He genuinely believed speaking out against Israel would get him killed. Now, here's where we got to be careful. He was a pro-Israeli person in the sense of the Israeli people and the religion of the Jewish people and the sacred ground in which the Israeli government currently occupies. Okay? Now, I'll also say this about that. Having not been an avid listener of Charlie Kirk's podcast, I will say this about that. Charlie Kirk obviously was a fan of mine. No, I'm not. The reason I say this is this. If you guys are a long-time listener of this show, we've been doing this show for 4.5 years. Going on 5 years in February. I said the exact same thing prior to 2023. When all that stuff happened. If you guys recall, I don't recall the show, but I made mention to the fact that Israel is probably one of the most surveilled countries in the world. And crossing their border isn't like crossing ours. And I had made mention that there's no way in hell that these individuals could have flown in on hang gliders and drove in on mopeds and created the havoc that they did unless they were allowed to do so. For whatever reason, was it to create turmoil? Was it to create a sense of national pride in the country? And what I mean by that is, take 9/11, for example. You guys know my thoughts on 9/11. If you're new to the show, if you just happen to stumble upon this episode, number one, how's it going? Number two, follow the show. Number three, go back to my 9/11 shows and you'll know exactly what I'm talking about, because I believe 9/11 was allowed to happen. There's a lot of other people that have conspiracy theories saying that the government was totally involved. I'm not saying that that's not necessarily true. I believe much like Pearl Harbor and the Gulf of Tonkin and these types of situations, these false flag situations, that these things were allowed to happen. I think that's where Charlie Kirk was going with this, was that in the grand scheme of things, it is of my opinion that Benjamin Netanyahu gives two shits about the people of Israel. Seriously. And that if allowing the attacks of October 7th to happen, it would enable him to do, obviously, what he's doing and have the public support in doing so. Okay? So that's where I'm going with this. So why would he continue to be a vocal supporter of Israel afterwards? Netanyahu himself praised Kirk after his death, calling him a defender of Judeo-Christian civilization. And that doesn't sound like someone who is secretly critical of Israel, but Netanyahu's a bastard, okay? I'm telling you right now, he's a bastard. I mean, his nickname is BB the Bavarian, or the BB, what is it? BB the some kind of shit like that. But the people over there know. You know, it's no big fucking secret. Okay? And I think if you go back and listen to that particular episode on the PBD podcast, you could see where he wanted to go with this. And that's my problem with a lot of podcasts out there. There's a lot of podcasts that are much bigger than this, that are just afraid to push that envelope. Okay, now, I not even kind of hinting at the fact that I'm anywhere near the level of Charlie Kirk or Patrick Bet-David or Tucker Carlson or anyone like that, but these guys make a living doing this. I make a living doing something else. So I feel like I can pretty much get on here and say whatever I want. Now, I could just be some crazy motherfucker from Florida that's shot out in the head, and if someone stumbles upon this video on Rumble at DontTreadonMericaTV, they're going to see the Gaston flag behind me. They're going to see the American flag behind me. They're going to see guns. They're going to see all sorts of shit. I'm drinking fucking bourbon. They're going to see a white old guy, not that old, 52, and think, oh, here's a white supremacist. Here's a, fucking Nazi. Here's a whatever. And I'll say this about that. Fuck and you. Okay? Because I'm not saying that I'm right, but I'm damn sure not saying I'm wrong with this. And everyone's focused on this person of interest. And we're going to get to all that here in a minute. But I think Charlie Kirk was onto something with all this, and he was just afraid to push the envelope. Not for fear that he would lose sponsorships or lose donations or lose audience, for that matter. I think he was afraid for his life and his family's life. It wasn't until recently that he actually started wearing a bulletproof vest when he went to these engagements. People are like, oh, he always wore them. No, he didn't. That only started less than a year ago that he started wearing a bulletproof vest. And if you actually watch the video of him getting shot, you'll notice that he actually got shot in the chest, the upper part of his chest. And the bullet ricocheted into his carotid artery there, killing him. It was relatively instant. If you watch the video, slow motion, unfortunately, it's out there. You'll see the bullet come in. You'll see it ricochet off the top of his vest and into his neck. Now, initially, the speculation on Twitter was that, this was because they apprehended a person, an individual, an older man, and he had a rifle. So obviously this was the guy. Upon further evidence, this was not the guy, and he was carrying some said it was a pellet gun. You know, the arguments on Twitter is it's a pellet gun. It's model blah 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 whatever. And then someone else, I own a gun shop, and that's clearly a Ruger 10/22. Not much different from a pellet gun. If you guys know anything about guns, and you also know this, that shot came from 400 feet away, like 200 some odd yards away. And was more than 400 feet. It was like 200 something yards. I can't remember the exact number they said, but nonetheless, a Ruger 10/22 doesn't even have that range. But even if by some grace of God that you are an expert marksman, which brings me to my next point, but that kind of gun doesn't have that kind of power. Number one, even if it made it to him, the vest would have absorbed it. And then you'll have people saying, see, AR-15, look at this, AR-15. Okay, AR-15 does, if you're good, does have that range. However, the 223 or 5.56 platform, once again, the vest would have ate that round. Okay, if you know anything about tactical vests and stuff, you can understand what I'm saying. It had to be a powerful enough weapon. Now, they're saying on the news that they found this gun via Harvey Oswald style in the woods, and it was a Mauser 30-06. Now, if you guys shoot guns, if you don't shoot guns, I'm going to learn you on some things. Okay, the Mauser is the 30-06, whatever brand it is a powerful enough weapon to do what it did. It's basically a 30 caliber bullet can travel the distance with lethal impact, and is a big enough round that it could have ricocheted and done what it did. You look more towards a 300 Win Mag, which is the sniper rifle that I use, it's here at the house. I swear to God, I've been here the whole time. Or a 308. Okay, but basically, well, the 300's a much bigger bullet. It's probably 3 or 4 inches with a lot more power. A 308 is more in line with the 30-06 cartridge. Okay. That being said, they found the rifle, supposedly. They found on the rooftop some handprints and whatever. So, assuming that it was a flesh handprint, arm print, whatever, DNA. Okay. People saying that this is a government situation, like our CIA or something like that. I was talking to Chris because he sent me a lot of this information we're going to talk about today. But, and I said this to him. I said, I don't believe our government was involved in this. I'm not saying they couldn't have been, but I'll say this about that. Anytime that our government is involved in an assassination of any kind in this country, in the history of this country, up recently, you talk about Trump and what was the name? Crooks, right? In Pennsylvania there. There's always someone that dies. Not necessarily the person that gets assassinated or attempted assassination in Trump's case, but the shooter. And then there's a conspiracy about that this Crooks guy might have been a patsy. He may have really thought he was on that roof to kill Trump. And, as the story goes, the conspiracy theory of this is that the shot actually came from underneath him in the window, below him in the warehouse he was on top of. Whatever, we're not going to debate that today. That's a show that we've already done. Whatever. In this situation, if this was our government doing this, they would already have the guy in custody, and he would already probably be dead. You understand where I'm going with this? Which brings me to what the FBI put out earlier this morning, that there's a possibility of a foreign involvement in this. Now, where I said that the theory on Twitter was that people were saying this, Well, the people that were saying this was the FBI. This wasn't like some rando on Twitter saying whatever. Wasn't some jackass with a full-time job and a part-time podcast saying this. It was the FBI that said this. Now, since then, those comments have vanished because now they have a person of interest. And we go back to Charlie Kirk saying what he said. Could he have made that comment to someone close to him? Sure, it's possible. I've said that comment. I've said that on this show, that the things I say on this show, if I had any kind of a actual, like a huge following, or even a quarter of the following that some of these other guys have, I say things, and I think the only thing that keeps this show going and keeps me from not going away is because I get shadow banned, I get blocked, I get, whatever, because who am I, right? And I think very well that Charlie Kirk could have said this to somebody if I keep doing what I'm doing. And then the comment he made shortly before, I think it was a week before he started this tour, was the same thing. That he needed to calm down the rhetoric on Israel. Now, Charlie Kirk is the type of person, the type of celebrity that we know for a fact gets death threats. Okay? And I think he may have said this in a side shoot, saying what he said because he probably knew that that was a possibility, that if you don't tone down your rhetoric, that, and it wasn't probably signed Bibi Netanyahu, it was probably just a random thing, and it could have just been from on Twitter. It could have been some rando Bob Johnson on Twitter, but Bob Johnson could be Bob Johnsonstein. I'm just throwing things out there, obviously. So obviously people say things in private that they don't say publicly, but without a recording, a text, or credible witnesses, the claim is just hearsay. But conspiracy theories often thrive on hearsay. So, and they take a grain of truth, Kirk's 2023 comments, and spin it into something explosive. What's more troubling is how the narrative feeds into old anti-Semitic tropes. And I'll say this about that. Whenever I say anything about the Israeli government or Netanyahu or the IDF, it has nothing, and I've said this 100 times, has nothing to do with the Jewish religion or the people of Israel. This has nothing to do with them. When I say what I say, it has nothing to do with anyone that is of the Jewish faith or an Israeli citizen. This has to do with those individuals. But blaming Israel or the Mossad for Kirk's death without evidence obviously echoes historical patterns of scapegoat, and it has nothing to do with Jewish people. Okay, let's just forget about that. What it was is Honest Reporting called this out just today, noting that these theories amplify dangerous misinformation. Now, I'm not saying anyone's pushing this theory is anti-Semitic. Some are just skeptical of powerful institutions, but we have to be careful about where these ideas lead. And I'm going to say it again. Guys, what I say has nothing to do, if you're Jewish, if you're Israeli, if you're whatever religion, I don't care. I don't care if you're Jewish, if you're Christian, Catholic, Islamic, I don't care. Okay? It's the ideology of the person. It has nothing to do with the religion of the person. Okay? But before we move on, let's hold on to this right now. No official investigation has linked Kirk's death to Israel as of yet. The FBI is still hunting for this college-age male suspect, which is important. College-age male suspect. And the motive is unknown. So is this claim about Kirk's fear of speaking out just noise, or is there something more? But we'll circle back to that here just in a second after our first break, so hang tight. All right, guys. Unlock your online freedom with DTOM. Tired of online restrictions, risky Wi-Fi, or trackers following your every click? With NordVPN, you're in control. Get military-grade encryption, blazing fast speeds, and access to over 6,300 servers in 111 countries. Stream your favorite shows, game securely, or browse worry-free on up to 6 devices with one account. Plus, NordVPN's Threat Protection Pro blocks ads, trackers, and malware for a smoother, safer experience. Right now, save up to 74% on a 2-year plan, plus get 4 extra months free with promo code DTOM at NordVPN.com. That's as low as $2.99 a month. Try it risk-free for 30 days, money-back guarantee. Don't wait. Secure your internet today with NordVPN. Visit NordVPN.com. Use promo code DTOM to unlock this deal. We'll be back in just a second. All right, guys, welcome back. So let's dive into this second conspiracy theory. And this one was interesting, and I'm going to tell you why here in just a second. This is the case of the missing private jet flight data. This one's got a real cloak and dagger vibe. The claim is that the private jet left an airport near Utah Valley University shortly after Charlie Kirk's assassination, and its flight data, call signs, designation, and owner was either erased or hidden from public tracking sites like Flight Radar 24. The implication is that the jet was carrying the shooter or someone connected to the plot, and powerful forces covered it up. So here's what we know. On September 10th, Kirk was shot around 12:20 Mountain Time. Some posts on Twitter had screenshots claiming a private jet took off from Provo Municipal Airport about 10 miles from UVU. Within an hour of the shooting, they pointed out that the jet's transponder data was incomplete. No registered owner, no clear destination. One post read, "Private jet leaves Provo right after Kirk's hit. No flight plan, no trace. Who was on board?" Again, no hard evidence was attached, just screenshots of a flight tracking app showing a blank entry. So I didn't know anything about this. Chris had actually, we were talking earlier, he had sent me this information. We were talking about it. And I immediately thought, okay, well, that's a little sketchy. But private jets aren't uncommon, especially in this area. And Provo's a small airport, but it handles private aviation regularly. A jet taking off after a shooting could be a coincidence. As for the missing data, there are legitimate reasons for incomplete flight logs. Some owners opt for privacy through programs like the FAA's LADD Limited Air Traffic Data Display, which restricts public access to flight information. Could someone have exploited this to cover the tracks? Sure, it's possible, but it is also probable the jet belonged to a CEO or celebrity who just wanted to be private. But he sent me this information. I had it. I put it in my show notes. As I'm getting ready to do the show, I put everything on the computer. And guess what was mysteriously missing? That. And I'll say this about that. You can go on Twitter nowadays and pretty much see anything. Okay? Really. Why was that taken down? Why was that one story taken down? Now, I did find it again, if it's still here. Let me pause this. I know I said let's pause this and the music stopped. It was not what it was. It's this right here. So, I did find it again. A private jet under the tail number N888KG left Provo Airport an hour after shooting, suspiciously 30 minutes flight into the flight. It drops off of ADS-B illegally and reappears heading back to Provo approximately an hour later. So I'll go back to what I said a minute ago. If they used the LAD tracking system to cover their number, their flight information, you wouldn't have seen the plane take off. And you wouldn't have seen the plane land. So the suspicion is, and the question is, why did after this plane took off and it was already 30 minutes, in the air disappear, essentially, on radar. Where did it go? And then, why did it come back? And then when it was coming back, it magically reappeared. And that's where your conspiracy theories fall in line. I could sit here and tell you, I can debunk the conspiracy theory on this by saying, oh, well, these guys, it's a rich CEO that owns this plane, and he just didn't want people to know where he was going. But I do not fly in private jets. I am not rich like that. So who here can answer this question by saying, oh, I go flying randomly for 2 hours and come back home on my private jet? Usually you leave to leave. You might be gone for a few days, a week, whatever. This wasn't a Cessna that they just were on a, flight around the state to learn how to fly. So it does raise a suspicion of what happened. Now, the owner of this jet is a CEO of a social media type company, not Facebook or anything like that, but it is also known that a lot of these individuals lease their planes out to whomever. I think there's a lot of questions to be asked about this, to be honest with you. Like I said, I can debunk it and just say, yeah, that's what they do. Story over. That's bullshit. But that's not what we do here. We thrive on conspiracies. And this one needs to be answered. So, it is of my opinion, based on what I've seen of the shot, that this was not a... If you want to believe the Trump situation, that this Crooks kid had a axe to grind and tried to kill Trump. Let's believe that narrative. I don't believe it, but let's believe it. If this is if they want you to believe that this is a similar situation, then at that distance, which was probably twice the distance that Crooks took the shot from, he was aiming for his chest. Now, if you've seen the video, you saw where Kirk was sitting under that canopy. Probably the best shot. Now, if you ever watch Charlie Kirk do these challenge me segments, whatever it's called, he does put the microphone down, he leans forward, he sits back, then he'll lean forward, grab the microphone, say whatever he says, he'll lean, put the microphone down, sit back, take a drink of water. So everyone knows his movements. They even did a thing on South Park about it. I mean, that's what he does. So the hand signals, I don't know. We'll get to that in a minute. But it is peculiar. And at that point when he got shot, they were talking about mass shootings. Could that have been the signal? What I mean by that is you have someone in the audience talk about mass shootings, and Charlie Kirk, and he's a staunch advocate of the Second Amendment. Because it was at this point when the kid asked the question, when the hand signals started coming from that guy. I just think it is very coincidental, but I think that if this was a professional hit, could this be a situation where it was to prove a point? Okay. So if you want to go with the idea that, let's say, a Democratic involved situation, I'm not saying like Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi put this guy up to it. I'm not saying that. But I'm saying that no. If it was a situation like this, where it was an idea to push for anti-Second Amendment advocacy, because shortly after you see this, you saw Twitter and you saw individuals quote tweeting what Kirk had said a while back about, defending the Second Amendment, and if, people die with guns, I can't remember the exact how it went, but people were like, yeah, see, this is what you get for saying that. And I'm going to get to that here in a minute too, as far as people celebrating this situation. But it's just ironic timing, okay? I'm sorry, it is. Because you got to think, this person on the roof, 200 plus yards away, Didn't hear that. He's on the other side of the audience. The audio is coming this way. It's not going that way. He wouldn't have heard the moment. However, he would have seen the hand signal. So, I know I'm jumping ahead, but anyway. So let's say, for argument's sake, it did involve a foreign agency like Mossad. Would they rely? Would they really be sloppy enough to use a private jet that could be tracked at all? Well, it wasn't tracked at all, and yes, they very well could have, because we're already trying to, it's already trying to be debunked. And the fact that it keeps on getting scrubbed off of Twitter raises my spidey senses, So, a jet with no transponder data would draw more attention, not less, and if the data was scrubbed, why leave any trace of it on a public site? Well, that's the thing. If we're saying that CEOs and celebrities use that LADD thing to mask their travel, you wouldn't have even seen the plane take off or land. The fact that it disappeared is where we raise questions. So, I found no mainstream reports confirming the suspicious jet, and the FBI hasn't mentioned anything about the flight data log in their updates. Twitter posts pushing the theory don't cite official sources, just speculation. And that being said, the time the jet leaving Provo is intriguing, and I'd love to see the FAA or FBI release a statement on it. Until then, it's just another piece of the puzzle with no clear fit. So what's driving this theory? I think is the need to explain the unexplainable. Kirk's killer obviously hasn't been caught yet. The motive is unclear. People want answers, and a mystery jet feels like a smoking gun. But correlation isn't causation. Keep that in mind as we move into the next conspiracy. But first, we'll take another quick break. All right, guys. Craving a cleaner, smokeless nicotine experience? Discover ALP nicotine pouches. The ultimate way to enjoy bold flavors and lasting satisfaction anytime, anywhere. With ALP, you get premium tobacco-free pouches in refreshing mint, wintergreen, sweet nectar, and tropical fruit flavors. And they also just released, I think it was yesterday or the day before, spearmint. Available in 3, 6, and 9 milligram strengths, discreet, moist, and packed with quality. ALP pouches fit your lifestyle, whether you're at work, on the go, or chilling out. Right now, new customers can save 10% on their first order at alppouch.com/DTOM. Grab your favorite flavor starting at just $24.95 and enjoy a smokeless revolution. Don't miss out. Stock up on ALP nicotine pouches and save 10% at alppouch.com/DTOM. We'll be back. All right, guys, it's time to tackle the third and maybe the most viral conspiracy theory, the hand signals. A video from Utah Valley University event has been circulating online, and it's got people buzzing. It shows a man standing behind Charlie Kirk moments before the shooting, making what some call suspicious hand gestures. One guy tips his hat, another in a black shirt crosses his arm and makes a finger sign. Twitter users are losing it over this. One post with over 50,000 views said, "This is not a normal gesture. Who was signaling who?" So let's break down the video. It's obviously shaky and it's taken from a cell phone and shows Kirk debating a student about mass shootings. He's in the middle of a response when two men behind him make these gestures. Seconds later, shots ring out and Kirk collapses. The Economic Times reported on this, noting that authorities believe the shooter fired from a rooftop, not from the crowd, which we know now is fact. That's key because it suggests the shooter wasn't close to these guys. But what we're missing here is the fact that if you've ever shot a gun, okay, and I'm going to tell you a little story. about a man named Jed. Okay, he was a poor mountain. No, seriously. I don't have it in here because we're doing some work in the illustrious DTOM studio. So my sniper rifle has been removed. It's in another room of the house because I don't want it to get fucked up. Anyway, this is a 300 Win Mag that I built using a Remington base rifle. Now, this gun, if you've ever shot a 300 Win Mag, it's a very, very powerful gun. Okay, this gun is capable of shooting a mile. Now, when I first bought the gun, stock, came with a basic Remington scope. And I was capable of shooting a target 300 yards away, 12 by 12, 12 inches by 12 inches. If you guys shot a gun at 300 yards, 12 by 12 is not very big. Hit it dead center because that's me. Anyway, currently the gun has a scope on it that can reach the distance of the gun. And what I mean by that is I can look through that scope and a 300, 400, 500 yard target is right here. A 30-06 has similar capabilities, not quite the distance that a 300 Win Mag has, but good enough. People saying that this was probably an AR, blah, blah, blah. No. You don't know anything about guns. You're just spouting popular sentiment towards a specific type of gun. In my opinion, it was either a 300 or a 308, which the 30-06 is similar to the 308 cartridge from that standpoint. And the reason I say that is, like I said before, the ricochet off the vest. Most standard civilian body armor, which I'm not saying that's what Kirk had. Maybe he had something more high level. Maybe, I don't know. But generally speaking, there's classifications of plates that you can buy. And generally speaking, most people buy body armor that will absorb a 5.56 223 round or a 7.62 round, which is your AK. Generally speaking, most civilian body armor will not absorb a 330 caliber type bullet. It could ricochet depending on where it hit on the plate, which it seems like that's what happened in this video. To me, that screams a professional hit. Now, I saw on Hannity when I woke up this morning, or I say this morning, last night when I got up for work, and I don't recall the name of the people, but there was a lady said, well, don't you think people would see a person running with a rifle? And that brings me back to the rifle, the Mauser 30-06 that was allegedly found in the woods. So let's just play for a second that this is what happened. That this kid, this college-age student is what they're saying, got off the roof with the gun, ran to the woods, dropped off the gun, and then ran back to the college to mix in with the people. That, to me, is a stretch. Now, this person of interest that they're showing on TV is a younger person. But much like Charlie Kirk had said in that interview with PBD about the IDF soldiers that are there, most of these individuals are 19, 20 years old. College-age students. You can't really tell much about the kid, what his ethnicity is. Obviously, he appears to be white, but maybe he's not white like me or you. Maybe he's a tan white, like Israeli. Just throwing speculation out there. And secondly, like the woman said, regardless of them saying they found this gun in the woods, to me means he was able to get off the roof, make it down to the ground with said gun, to go dispose of it in the woods. And all this chaos and commotion, you would think people would see that. Now, what's interesting to me is they have still shots of what appears to be closed circuit TV of him ascending up a stairwell. Was it the stairwell to the roof of the building? Possibly. I don't know. They haven't said that. They just show a guy going upstairs. I'll say this. He didn't have a gun in his hand when he was going up the stairs. So you could say, oh, maybe the gun was already up there. Maybe it was already planned. Okay, so if it was up there, why would he take it with him? And then back to what that one person had said, people would have noticed. There's a guy running out there in the woods with a gun, right? Well, there was another lady on there, I believe. Once again, don't recall her name, but if I'm not mistaken, she was a former FBI counter-terrorist person. And she interrupted this lady in her statement and said he could easily blend in if it was a rifle with a collapsible stock. Put it in a backpack. A college-age person with a backpack at a university would not stick out like a sore thumb. So that's very plausible. When they haven't shown a picture of this gun that they found, but the idea is that this was just your standard issue, go to a gun shop and buy a Mauser 30-06 or whatever brand. They are a wood stock gun. They don't have a collapsible post. And it wouldn't be a standard issue. That type of gun is something you'd have to build. They don't make them like that. It would either cost you a lot of money to buy or you just build it yourself. It feels like to me that there is something definitely going on. I feel like these hand gestures could be coincidental, but we don't thrive on coincidences on this show. I feel like it was timed. It was perfectly timed to send a message. Now, recently I've seen posts, and I saw it on the news, where supposedly they found cartridges and the gun had writing on it, a la the trans shooter in Minnesota. If this person of interest is the shooter, to me, doesn't look like a trans anything. So, is this just a way to cover up the theory that this was... my phone wants to listen to me. That's ironic. Mossad. Well, if we push the narrative towards the transgender situation, we'll get back to the whole transgenders are mentally ill, blah, 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 which I'm not arguing. But I think it's very coincidental timing that you want to go that route. And furthermore, they haven't shown a picture of this gun or where they found it or anything else. You guys know as well as I do, whenever you see these school shootings or any of these types of things, we always see the gun. So if you found the gun, why haven't we seen the gun? Well, it's part of investigation. There's always an investigation, and we still see the shit. Which brings me back to the complicity of our government. Is our government complicit in this? Not so much in the act, but the cover-up of the act. And that's where we need to look. Is if this was a foreign entity, and we're going to base that around Mossad and the IDF, would our government cover that up? And I think that they probably would, especially if they can get a patsy. But the fact that this kid hasn't been found yet is weird. Okay? College-age kid randomly takes a shot to kill Charlie Kirk. He succeeds, but no one knows who this guy is. No one's ever seen him. This is I would say at this point, it's probably a worldwide manhunt, but even if it's a countrywide manhunt, you mean to tell me there's not one person that'd be like, oh my God, that's Billy, right? However, if he's not from this country, and he was sent here for a purpose. Before, this was the kickoff to his tour, before he got going, it raises red flags to me. The hand gestures, the signals, that does happen in crowded places with snipers. We can look back at different situations. JFK, Bobby Kennedy. These things that we know were assassination attempts or successions, that there were signals prompted. Umbrellas. Loud noises. That can't be coincidence, guys. But the theory ties back to the Israel angle. Some posts on Twitter claim the men were Mossad operatives signaling the hit because Kirk was about to turn on Israel. And this loops us back to the first conspiracy, the alleged fear of speaking out. But again, there's no hard evidence, obviously, that Kirk was planning to criticize Israel. His track record shows unwavering support, and Israeli leaders like Netanyahu and Isaac Herzog mourned him as a true friend. But it's interesting. I also saw a report that supposedly Netanyahu invited him to come to Israel, and Kirk declined. So you once again have to ask that question. If we want to believe that Kirk was pro-Israel in everything they're doing, not so much the country, but the government, why would he decline an invitation to go there unless he feared that he wouldn't come back? Just questions we have to ask. So, obviously, we've covered a lot today. 3 conspiracy theories, each with its own mix of intrigue and speculation. The claim that Charlie Kirk said he'd be killed for speaking out against Israel is based on that podcast clip and unverified X post with no hard evidence. But I'm going to play one other clip for you. Let me pause the music here. This was him on his podcast speaking out about Mossad.
That Epstein, with his little friend Ghislaine and Ghislaine's father, Robert Maxwell, who was obviously a spy of the Israeli intelligence agencies, that there was something else going on here. Epstein was not some sort of whiz-kid hedge fund manager. Epstein was playing a part. Epstein was a LARPer. Epstein was cast for a specific role, and he played it really well. The sweatpants and the Harvard jacket, the kind of disheveled hair, looking as if he was so smart and above the clouds that he was doing advanced mathematic equations on the back of napkins. But if you actually go into some of the videos of people that met with Epstein at the time, they said he was awfully unimpressive when it came to finance and markets and economics. And it's nothing new that if you're in the intel agencies, you want to try and get as much blackmail on powerful people as possible. Easy, not hard. And this is no longer just speculation. First of all, the evidence that shows that Epstein was a creation of either Mossad, Israeli intelligence, American intelligence, Saudi intelligence, or maybe he was just a hired gun. Maybe he was just the guy that countries would go to and park a couple $100 million and say, hey, can you get one of the members of the royal family with a 13-year-old so we can get them to do what we want to do? Members of Congress are actively being blackmailed. The Epstein playbook is being used on a daily basis. Jeffrey Epstein was not a financier. He was not a hedge fund manager. Jeffrey Epstein was a key player in a multi-decade blackmail operation against the most powerful people on the planet.
So, I think that, too, is a situation because he tied him back to Mossad and Israel. I think that Charlie Kirk was on the verge of saying the things that shouldn't be said, and I think that's probably what got him killed. So obviously his assassination is a tragedy, and the lack of suspects or motivation leaves a vacuum. Humans hate vacuums. We fill them with stories, some plausible, some outlandish. The theories we discuss today tap into real fears, distrust of powerful institutions, foreign governments, or hidden agendas. But we have to be careful. Jumping to conclusions without evidence can lead us down a dangerous path. So my advice, obviously, is to stay curious, but skeptical. Check your resources. Double check your resources. Look at updates, official statements. Whatever you see on Twitter, whatever you might see on TikTok if you're on there, double check that. Make sure it's not AI. But before I get out of here, I want to say a couple things. For the people that are applauding what happened yesterday, you're fucking idiots. Okay? And I was thinking about this as I was preparing to do the show today, that I don't condone violence. Okay? Violence, in my opinion, is a necessary evil. Okay? But I think the time now that we're in, you're seeing a lot of people on Twitter and different Facebook, whatever, where they are applauding this situation. We need to, not physically, but with action, strike back at these people. Not physically. What I mean by that is, if you see someone on your Facebook feed or your Twitter feed or whatever feed, and let's say that person works at a hospital, or they're a teacher, or they own a business of some sort, we need to blackball those people. We need to shut their businesses down. We need to get them fired from their jobs. And why am I saying this? Because 4 or 5 years ago, they would do that to us. Okay? I fear that we're never going to find out the truth of what happened. We're going to be told a truth, but we're never going to find out the truth. Especially if this truth is what I feel it is. But I will say this. If this was a random act of violence, and that this kid was a transgender, pro-gay, lesbian advocate and hated what Charlie Kirk stand for, whatever. We can't, it's whatever. It is what it is. But I say, as much as the left overreacted to the death of George Floyd, that we overreact to the death of Charlie Kirk. And we raise him up. And we support his family. We support Turning Point USA. And don't let his death, don't let him disappear, I guess is the best way to put it. I feel like this story will never be told. We'll never find out the actual truth. We might get somebody, maybe not. I feel like at this point, we'll never know who this person is, especially if he's not from this country. If this was a professional hit, which to me and a lot of other people, it screams as such, you'll never know. This wasn't Ryan Ruth sitting in a golf course. This wasn't Thomas Crooks on the top of a warehouse. This was a person who perched himself 200 plus yards away with one shot. One shot. Thomas Crooks let off, 6 rounds? I mean, Oswald, allegedly, shot 3 or 4 rounds. Think about it, guys. This isn't just an avid random dude with a hunting rifle that can make this shot. This doesn't happen. People are like, oh, if he was an avid hunter, these guns are rampant in Utah because people use them to go deer hunting and whatever. Okay. Generally speaking, when you're deer hunting, you're not 200-300 yards away from the deer. If you guys have ever gone hunting of any kind, you generally set a trap, so to speak, for the deer or whatever the animal is you're tracking. And when they're within, I'm not saying within a couple feet, but generally when they're within 100 yards is when you take the shot, because you want to make sure you hit them. Because even a person that hunts every year, all the time for however many years, there's something about shooting a gun at a live target, whether it's an animal or not. Your adrenaline kicks in. You have to really be calm when it comes to this. When it comes to being a sniper, you have to be at a whole nother level of calm to get that kind of shot off with that kind of accuracy. And that's what we're missing, and that's what nobody's talking about. You're going to listen to other podcasts. They're going to have their conspiracy theories. You might even hear people say that this is a bunch of bullshit and it was fake, and there's AI video and stuff like that about the ring and all that stuff. The fact of the matter is this guy's dead. And we're going to speculate. Even when we're told the truth, we're still going to speculate what the truth is. So, like I said, guys, double check whatever you read. Be skeptical, please. Be skeptical. And what I want you to do is this. Reach out to me, okay? Find me on Twitter at DTOM Podcast 1776. Ooh, coming in hot. Or you can find me on social media, Don't Tread on America on Facebook, Instagram, True Social, and TikTok. All those levels, guys, you can message me. If you have any thoughts on this, if you have any conspiracies of your own that I didn't talk about, do that. You can also email me, DonQ at DontTreadonMerica, and you go to the website, DontTreadonMerica.com, and you can reach me there. There's like 6 levels of being able to reach me. I really, truly would like to hear from you on this. Please. We could talk about it. Because the show I was actually going to do yesterday, I was going to dive into this whole Middle East thing. So if I get done with work early enough tomorrow, I'll bring that show to you tomorrow. So guys, what I need you to do is this. Whatever podcast app you're listening to this on, make sure you subscribe to the show you're following, whatever that button is there. It's free. It doesn't cost you anything. And if you're on Apple or Spotify, leave a review. That helps me out a lot. And if you want to leave a comment on there, you can too. That's fine. If you want to have a discussion, if you have information that I didn't discuss, I encourage you to reach out to me. Hell, maybe we can set up a meeting, visual, person, have you on the show, whatever. I don't care. And we can have a conversation. Okay? Other than that, guys, you have a great Thursday, 9/11. Let's not forget about that. Have a great day, and hopefully I'll be back tomorrow with the show that I was actually going to do. Other than that, you have a great day. We'll talk later. See ya.